Sometimes the fate of an entire civilization, a whole empire, can pivot on the life of just one person. Today, we're diving into a story like that. It's about Rome's last truly great general, a man whose loyalty was, unfortunately for him, matched only by the treachery of the very people he swore to protect. This is the story of a betrayal that didn't just kill a man, it threw the gates of the eternal city wide open, leading directly to one of the most shocking moments in all of ancient history, the sack of Rome. And we're going to start with this quote. It's from Alaric, the king of the Goths. On the surface, it sounds like something a farmer would say, right? But coming from him, it is an absolutely chilling threat. The hay he's talking about? That's the population of Rome. And the scythe? Well, that's his army. In one simple sentence, you get this perfect picture of the cold, pragmatic brutality of the man who would bring an 800-year legacy of invincibility crashing to the ground. It's a sign of what's to come, a world where Roman power isn't what it used to be. All right, so let's set the scene. The year is 406 AD, and if you were in Rome, you'd think things were going great. The city is celebrating. Their top general, Flavius Stilicho, a man of Vandal heritage who rose to become the most powerful man in the entire Western Empire, has just crushed another huge Gothic invasion. The senators are giving speeches, the people are breathing a sigh of relief, and for a second, it really looks like the danger is past. But Stilicho, he isn't celebrating. He's one of the only people who sees the terrifying truth behind the victory parade. And this right here, this shows you the massive disconnect that was happening. You've got the Roman Senate, safe in their fancy villas, and all they see is victory. They're popping the ancient equivalent of champagne, thinking, great, Italy is secure, the glory of Rome lives on. But Stilicho, he sees the reality on the ground. He knows that northern Italy is a wasteland after the invasion. He knows the imperial economy is on life support, totally collapsing from the cost of constant war. And maybe worst of all, he knows he's serving a weak, indecisive emperor, Honorius, who's frankly more of a liability than a leader. So while the Senate is convinced the threat is over, Stilicho can practically hear the thunder of a much, much bigger storm just over the horizon. Well, that victory party, it didn't last long. Not at all. Just as Stilicho feared, the whole facade of Roman stability starts to crack, and it happens fast. Breathtakingly fast. The peace he bought with blood and iron just shatters, as crisis after crisis erupts all at once. His military, which was already stretched thin, is pushed to the absolute breaking point. The storm he saw coming, it's finally here. And this is where it all just starts to fall apart, like dominoes tipping over one after another. So in December of 406, the Rhine River freezes solid, and a massive coalition of tribes, Vandals, Alans, Suebi, they just walk across into Gaul. Now, why was Gaul undefended? Because Stilicho had to pull those troops out just months before to go fight the Goths in Italy. It was a gamble he had to take, and it backfired horribly. At almost the exact same time, way over in Britain, the Roman legions there feel totally abandoned. They haven't been paid properly in ages. So what do? They rebel. They just declare their own guy emperor, and he starts marching into Gaul too, adding a Roman civil war on top of a barbarian invasion. It's a complete nightmare. Stilicho's got nothing left in the tank. He scrapes together a small force, but it's not enough. They're forced to pull back, and just like that, Gaul and Britain are basically lost. The empire is literally cracking apart. So you've got invasions from the outside, civil war on the inside. What else could possibly go wrong? Oh, I know. An old enemy shows up. Alaric the Goth, the very same guy Stilicho had defeated before, sees this total chaos and thinks, this is my chance. He's rebuilt his army, and he marches right up to the border of Italy. But this time, he's not looking for a fight. No, he's smarter than that. He comes demanding payment. He knows Rome is too weak to fight another war, and he is going to squeeze that weakness for everything it's worth. And this is his price: 4,000 pounds of gold. Try to even picture that. It is an astronomical, crippling amount of money. For perspective, we're talking about a huge chunk of the entire state's yearly income. So when this demand gets to the Senate in Rome, they lose their minds. They're screaming for war, for Roman honor, how dare this barbarian? But Stilicho, the ultimate realist, he looks at the state of his armies and knows a war with Alaric right now is suicide. So he makes a decision that is deeply unpopular, but strategically the only one he can make. He agrees to pay the ransom. So the big question is, where do you get 4,000 pounds of gold? Well, Stilicho turns to the very same senators who were just screaming for war and says, okay, open your wallets. He forces them to cough up huge parts of their own personal fortunes. But even that's not enough. To make up the difference, he orders the stripping of Rome's ancient pagan temples. They melt down sacred statues, priceless works of art that had been there for centuries. For the old Roman aristocracy, this was unforgivable. In their eyes, Stilicho saved Italy, sure, but he did it by sacrificing Rome's dignity, its wealth, and its sacred history. And in that moment, he turned his last few allies into his most bitter enemies. And that very practical, very smart decision to save the empire, well, it ends up becoming the perfect weapon for his enemies to use against him. The story now moves from the bloody frontiers to the even bloodier politics of the imperial court in Ravenna, and in this snake pit, a plot starts to form. The whispers against the half-barbarian general, the one who paid off the enemy by desecrating Roman temples, those whispers get louder and louder. The lion who had survived so many battles is about to walk right into a political trap. And there's no way out of this one. And here's how it all goes down, and it happens so fast it'll make your head spin. A rival official, a guy named Olympius, gets the ear of the Emperor Honorius. And remember, Honorius is paranoid and easily manipulated, the perfect target. Olympius weaves this completely made-up story. He says the Eastern Roman Emperor just died, and he claims Stilicho is planning to go east, murder the young heir, and put his own son on the throne. It's a total lie, but it sounds just plausible enough. The emperor panics. He gives Olympius the green light, and immediately a violent purge begins. Stilicho's friends, his top officers, they're all rounded up and murdered. And then the official declaration comes down. Stilicho, the defender of Rome, is now an enemy of the state. Stilicho is completely blindsided. By the time he figures out what's happening, it's too late. His own troops, his loyal bodyguards, they're begging him, let us fight, we can win this. And they probably could have. He had the men, he had the skill to start a civil war and come out on top. But he refuses. In his final act, he chooses the idea of Rome over his own life. To stop Romans from killing Romans while the frontiers were collapsing, he orders his men to lay down their weapons. He's arrested, and on August 22, 408 AD, Flavius Stilicho is executed. And of course, no evidence of the conspiracy was ever found, because it never existed. So they killed Stilicho. Problem solved, right? Wrong. So wrong. His execution isn't the end of the crisis. It's the trigger for the absolute catastrophe. The plotters thought they were saving Rome from a traitor, but what they really did was kill the only man who could have saved them from what was about to happen. The fury they were so afraid of from Stilicho was about to be unleashed on them by Alaric. What happens next is a masterclass in how to completely screw everything up. The anti-Stilicho purge turns into a racist, anti-barbarian pogrom. Roman soldiers start attacking the families of the foederati. These were the Gothic and German troops serving in the Roman army, the very backbone of Stilicho's forces. These were his most loyal, most battle-tested soldiers. And now their general is dead, and their families are being hunted down. So what do you think they do? It's a military disaster for Rome. Thousands of them, the best soldiers Italy had, defect. They march straight over to Alaric's camp, offer him their swords, and bring with them a burning desire for revenge against Rome. The plotters have just single-handedly doubled the size of Alaric's army with Rome's own elite troops. And the result of that is terrifyingly simple. The road to Rome is now wide open. Completely. Alaric doesn't even have to fight a single battle. He just starts marching south. The last lion is dead. The army that could have stopped him has either been purged or has joined him. And Emperor Honorius? He's cowering behind the walls of his fortress in Ravenna, totally helpless, just watching as the Gothic army walks right past, heading straight for the heart of the empire. So what happens next is something that hadn't happened in nearly 800 years. 8 centuries. A foreign enemy is at the gates of Rome itself. And this time, there is no hero to save the day. The final act of this whole tragedy is about to play out, and with it, the myth of the eternal city is going to be shattered for good. Now, Alaric is a smart commander. He's not going to waste his men's lives throwing them against Rome's massive walls. So he doesn't attack. He just surrounds the city, takes control of its port, and cuts off all the grain shipments. He decides to use famine as his weapon. And inside those walls, a population of almost 800,000 people starts to starve. Imagine a huge modern city, just cut off, slowly dying. Panic turns to despair. Disease breaks out. The dead are left in the streets. The Senate, totally desperate, decide they have to negotiate. So during these negotiations, the Roman envoys, they try to bluff. They boast about all the citizens they have ready to fight, and Alaric just laughs at them, and he delivers that famous line, "The thicker the hay, the easier it is mowed." Then he lays out his demands, all the gold, all the silver, silk, spices. The envoys are stunned, and they ask him, "Well, what will you leave for us?" And he gives this bone-chilling reply, "Your lives." This wasn't a negotiation. It was a notice of total surrender. The power dynamic could not have been clearer. But even after Rome paid a massive ransom, the negotiations with the emperor back in Ravenna just collapsed. Honorius was stubborn and foolish to the very end. Alaric, feeling insulted and with no other options, marches on Rome for the third and final time. And on August 24th, 410 AD, it happens. The Salarian Gate is opened from the inside, probably by slaves who were promised their freedom. For 3 straight days, the Goths sacked the city. Now, by the standards of the time, it was actually pretty restrained. They left the main churches alone. But the psychological damage, it was off the charts. And then the final irony. Just 3 months later, Alaric himself is dead from a fever, having never achieved his ultimate goal of a permanent home for his people. And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. The buildings could be repaired, the gold could be replaced, but the idea of Rome, the myth that was broken, that could never be fixed. For centuries, Rome wasn't just a city, it was a symbol of permanence, of order, of invincibility. When the news spread across the world that Rome itself had fallen, it was a shockwave. It wounded the entire psyche of the ancient world. From that moment on, the collapse of the Western Roman Empire wasn't just something to be afraid of. It was something that could actually happen. It made the unthinkable thinkable.
And that leaves us with this incredible, tragic irony. Stilicho, Rome's last lion, he spent his entire life fighting to hold the empire together. And in his final moments, he chose loyalty to that ideal. He refused to start a civil war just to save his own skin. But in doing that, he handed the keys to the kingdom over to the very men who would immediately wreck his life's work and leave Rome totally defenseless. Which brings us to our final, haunting question. Did Stilicho's greatest act of loyalty end up sealing the fate of the very empire he died to protect? It's a question that historians still argue about, and it's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most noble choices can have the absolute worst consequences.